respects to all Indigenous cultures within our community. We have a full attendance, councillors. There are no leave of absences or apologies. Item 4, declarations of interest in this matter, being the only matter on the agenda. Any declarations of interest, councillors? No? Okay, moving on. So noted nil. Justine? No public forums or deputations under item 5. No business arising under item 6. No petitions under item 7. No councillor or delegate reports under item 8. Nothing from the Audit, Risk and Business Improvement Committee from item 9. So it brings us to item 10, councillor 10.1, which is a Livingstone Shire boundary signs. And councillors, I'm going to move a procedural motion to suspend standing orders so we can discuss this matter probably more informally around the table and discuss each of the particular points raised in the recommendation. So I'll move. All in favour? Thank you, councillors. All right, so councillors, following the workshop on the 27th of April, we considered several signage options for achieving the boundary delineation for Livingstone Shire. And the recommendation before you there is that we endorse the proposed boundary signage, endorse the proposed boundary signage design concepts articulated in attachment 1 and proceed with the manufacturing and delivery of said signage, or 2, endorse an alternate signage approach that can be delivered within works for Queensland timeframe limitations. 3, proceed with the approval process through Department of Transport and Main Roads and subsequent installation of the proposed boundary signs at the 3 principal entry site locations described in attachment 2. Consider whether it is prudent to proceed with the Yeppoon Road location pending finalisation of road widening plans by the Department of Transport and Main Roads. And 4, endorse the inclusion of a departing message drive safely on the reverse side of the structure directed towards motorists exiting the Shire. So what I'm proposing, councillors, is that we look at each of these, and I know you're changed, councillor, I'll come to that in a minute.
The screen keeps moving.
Right, yeah. So I propose we deal with point 1 first, councillors, and then move through the list after that. As I said, we've suspended standing orders so we can be a little bit freer in terms of the conversation around that. So opening the floor, councillors, you've got point 1, endorse the proposed boundary signage design concept articulated in attachment 1 and proceed with the manufacturing and delivery of said signage. Councillor Mather. Oh, councillor, before you get underway, we'll just, as I said, we're in suspension of standing orders at the moment.
Just a question,
yep.
Sir, that's all. When we were referring to attachment 1, in the report that we are dealing with, attachment 1 is the Marlborough sign with the cow on it, or the bull on it.
It'll be attachment 1, I'm assuming, councillor, in the entry signage component of the same report.
Councillor, that is included to indicate the style.
Yeah.
So can we just be clear on what we're discussing here in attachment 1?
Yeah, on the screen, councillor, you'll see the Welcome to Livingstone Shire design there, Darramble Country. The Marlborough sign there is just put there as an indication or indicative of what it could indicatively look like, as I understand it, Mr. CEO, is that right?
Yes.
Correct, right, yeah. All right. So Councillor Mather, are you okay? Understand what we're doing?
They're 2 different signs. These are 2 different signs.
Yeah, they're 2 different signs. I guess the Marlborough sign there is just basically giving you an indication of what the sizing and the type of design that the one on the top would look like.
Just a question to the officer there. Welcome to Livingstone Shire. You have smaller letters over the Marlborough sign.
Yes.
Welcome to component as well as around the country, and there are other PowerPoint it's got a couple of more recent examples of what yet, but, you know, this is indicative. You want to go down and form it, or those 6 lines, you know, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
No, keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Next.
I'll make sure microphones get turned on, please. Sorry.
All right, Russell, did you want to speak to those? Thank you.
These are just options for how we might incorporate a welcome to Rumble Country and Livingstone Shire within the sign. So it can come in different ways. My thought that the welcome to would be obviously smaller than the Livingstone Shire component up to the left and slightly off to the left above Livingstone. I would have more separation between welcome to and Livingstone. And then you can read that as welcome to Livingstone Shire and Rumble Country. So the welcome to applies to both.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Russell, when with these signs, especially up near the border of Isaac coming into Livingstone, is that area not a third traditional owner in that area besides Durumble?
I have
people?
heard that in recent times, yeah.
So we'd need to look into that to make sure that we were actually
Right.
giving the correct
Yeah,
information.
I'm not sure about what those boundary, I guess there's still some dispute there. I don't know.
Sure, thank you so much. And my second question is, moving on, so we have an understanding of the first proposal. The second proposal is endorse an alternative signage approach that can be delivered within Works for Queensland timeframe limitations. If we look at an alternative and the TMR signage that is shown here in the report as an attachment, would they be able to be delivered within that Works for Queensland timeframe? That is page 22.
I can't give you a for certain answer on that because it would fit into other commitments of transport and main roads, and I can't say for certain. I would say there's a reasonably good possibility of that occurring, but I can't give you an absolute guarantee. It is TMO.
Councillors, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, following on from Councillor Friend, there is either through the officer or the CEO, perhaps if the signs can't be necessarily actually, erected in that time frame, can there be the ability to liaise with, the provider of those, so that an agreement is met to provide this particular signage and payment will be made on this date, and basically the process still facilitated, but we don't sort of hang ourselves on whether it gets installed on the 23rd of June or not, but providing the background work is done, that there'd be some flexibility there, I would imagine. So just looking for clarification there.
Mr Mayor, I'm sure the orders can be placed and the funds committed. Our obligations around acquittal to the funding body will hopefully take into account that we're dealing with another state agency alongside the state agency that's the funding body.
Councillor Mather?
Mr Mayor, I don't see anything wrong with 2, as long as we agree on what the alternative signage is. As the CEO says, if we commit to a design, we commit to funding, it's only a matter of time before they can deliver it. So we're substantially compliant in relation to the Works for Queensland, I would imagine. But I don't accept number 1. I couldn't accept that one.
Well, just so we're clear, councillors, item 1 is a standalone recommendation. 2, 3 and 4 are kind of combined, as I understand it. So It's item point 1 is endorse the proposed boundary signage concepts articulated in attachment 1 and proceed with the manufacturing and delivery of said signage, or endorse, proceed and endorse points 2, 3 and 4.
Can we just make sure we've got 3 and 4? Is what we want?
So you've got what you basically, if you are ignoring point 1 or discounting point 1 and you're going to accept alternate signage, then 3 and 4 will be the Department of Transport and Main Roads signage that was put up on the slide on the screen not too long ago.
Can you send us the
There you go, that one there.
ones rather than keep going back and changing the screen all the time? And we've lost track of what the
Can I send you what, Councillor?
what you put on the screen originally.
Yeah, that's basically, I'm talking to what's in the report at the moment, Councillor.
Yes, okay. Yes, I'm going to number 3,
Yeah,
where we only make reference to 3 signs.
right.
And a previous recommendation that you had up there was to remove any numbers.
I didn't have any recommendation on the screen, Councillor. We just verbally said that we would change the recommendation
Yes.
to proceed with the approval process through Department of Transport and Main Roads and subsequent installation of the proposed boundary signs at the principal entry site locations.
That's
Full
right.
stop.
That needed to be removal of that word 3.
Yeah. So that's just basically councillors taking away the point about the 3 principal entry signages and leaving it open, a little bit more open to allow us scope in case there are more entry signs locations
And the other
required,
amendment,
other than 3.
and the other amendment, Mr Mayor, where we're going to described in attachment 2, because it only made reference to some of them, not all of them. So we were going to eliminate those 4 words.
Yeah, well, that's right. But as I said, it stops at site locations, councillor.
Yes.
There's nothing beyond that point.
We can take that out.
And then the next sentence commences, consider whether. Everyone with me? I haven't lost anybody? Councillor Eastwood,
That
you
sounds-
okay with where I'm at?
The rest of 3 sounds all right, Mr Mayor?
Okay, so Justine, on the recommendation, we will take off, we're proposing to take off Mr CEO.
I was just going to give Justine a hand.
All right, yeah, no worries, all right, thank you, that'd be great.
You've still got standing orders as well.
Still suspending on standing orders, yet. So what we're proposing, the resolution on the screen, councillor, take away point 1, I think is where we're heading, and that's the bit to endorse the proposed boundary signage design concept articulated in attachment 1. So we're proposing that's removed, I think.
Door is still there.
Yeah, just maybe let the CEO Justine get this up in draft form first. No, not that one. Don't delete that. So we're taking away the reference to the 3 principal signs. So it will read, proceed with the approval process through the Department of Transport and Main Roads and subsequent installation of the proposed boundary signs. Take away at the 3 principal, at the 3.
Oh, yeah.
Boundary signs, it should be at the principal entry site locations. Hang on, let me deal with this one first, councillors. I'm talking about confusing. Principal entry site locations and take away described in attachment 2. And then consider whether it is prudent to proceed with the Yeppoon Road location pending finalisation of road widening plans by the Department of Transport and Main Roads. And thirdly, endorse, so we need to change the numbering there, Justine, to 1, 2, 3. Endorse the inclusion of a departing message, drive safely on the reverse side of the structure directed towards the motorist exiting the Shire. But Councillor May, that was what we were talking about prior to the meeting?
Mr Mayor, but if you go to the top line,
That council resolved to,
no, roads.
no, that's not in it anymore,
That's all
councillor.
gone now.
That's gone. So the new recommendation is what's in the bottom box.
Sounds good, Mr Mayor, thank you.
So councillors, that's Councillor Hutton.
Just a question, the second part of part 2 where it says consider whether it's prudent, that's a question rather than a statement, so would we normally have a question in the resolution?
No.
So,
Coming to that, yeah. All right, so councillors, just making sure point 1 is clear, we're endorsing an alternate signage approach that can be delivered within Works for Queensland timeframe limitations. Happy with that? Understand that? Number 2, proceed with the approval process through the Department of Transport and Main Roads and subsequent installation of the proposed boundary signs at the principal entry site locations. Okay, now this next bit is a little bit different. Consider whether it's prudent to proceed with the Yeppoon road location pending finalisation of road widening plans by DTMR. And Councillor Hutton's right, that's actually it's not a resolution per se, so we need to change the wording on that. So ultimately,
Can I
you can
suggest
put that council proceeds with,
determine when to proceed with the Yeppoon Road location?
well, that leaves it open. That leaves it up in the air too, Councillor
So
Mather.
Can you say council to proceed?
Council can, if you wish to, council to proceed with the Yeppoon Road location
That
pending
suit?
finalisation of road widening plans.
Thank
by
you,
the-
councillor.
And endorse the inclusion of a departing message, drive safely on the reverse side of the structure directed towards motorists exiting the Shire. So we eliminated any confusion, councillors?
Yes, there is one, Mr Mayor. I hate to tell you this. Council to proceed in that sentence.
Council to proceed with the Yeppoon, yeah?
In other words, go ahead now, that's what that means.
Yes.
We're
Well,
determining
no,
when.
not necessarily now, just.
No, I know that, that's
Yeah.
what it reads.
Sorry, Councillor Mather, it says pending finalisation of the road widening plans. So it doesn't say proceed now, it proceeds when that's done.
Yes, okay, I'll accept that, Mr Mayor.
Righto. Councillor Hutton?
do we have to make any direction around, obviously this format will provide a much reduced budget expenditure. Do we need to provide any direction around where the other money is to go? For want of
A fair point, councillor. A fair point. Councillors, we're still in suspension of standing order, so any comments?
Mr Mayor, I think what we need to do is determine how many signs we have at our availability, what the additional signs will cost us, and determine how much is left over as to what we can do with it.
Yeah, I think Councillor Hutton's point is if there's any money left over, what do we do with it? Which would potentially form a point 4, councillor?
Yes, but we won't know how much, so we can't determine it
No,
at
but we
this
can be
point in time.
sufficiently generic within point 4 to allow us
Yes.
scope to be able to deal with that.
Yes.
So point 4 could essentially, Councillor Hutton, would you like to sort of come up with some wording on that one? Sorry to throw you under the bus.
that the council resolved to
Apply surplus funding?
apply surplus funding, and I guess it's work for Queensland funding, so it will have caveats attached to it anyway. So, or council resolved to seek further advice as to
Providing excess funds to locality signs.
Yeah.
well, we've got no
Or do you want to seek approval to apply the surplus funding to, what did you say, Mr. CEO? Locality signage, thank you, yeah.
Do we need locality signs? Yeah.
Certainly, well, for example, Byfield would very much appreciate some a generic signage of some sort as opposed to the proliferation of signs that are currently there. So I think there would be scope within certain areas to improve the entry signage there. But just to continue on from that, if I could, does this motion capture, or number 2, that does it capture the as of yet unresolved boundary locations that are yet to be determined, which would incorporate 2 signs, I believe, or do we know what the 3?
Yeah, that was why we were avoiding quantifying the number of site locations. We originally, in the original motion, it had 3 entry site locations. We wanted to sort of leave it sufficiently generic, councillor, so that we could potentially identify more entry signs or entry sign locations as they became available. Once things like boundary reviews are clarified, etc., etc.
Mr Mayor, the members weren't here when we discussed this earlier, just during lunch. When I put my notice motion in, it made reference to 5 signs, 5 locations, boundaries. There were in fact 6. I left one out by mistake, and that was the one on the old Serena Road that goes up into Isaacs. The discussion a little while ago, if we order 3 signs, that will only cost us so much now, but if we have to order 3 more signs later on, it will be dearer. So the idea was that wherever the boundary is going to be on the southern side, we're going to have to put signs up somewhere. So we might as well order all of them at the same time. So
Okay.
we don't know how much money that will be available.
So I guess just to clarify, that is within the scope of number 2 there, is it?
Yes,
It
that's why
allows
we
for
took.
that.
Yeah, well, proceed with the approval process and subsequent installation of the proposed boundary signage at the principal entry site locations.
At the principal
Entry
site
sites from
locations.
north and south.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I guess as long as it captures all of those
Yes.
boundary crossings that we previously agreed to do, which
Yes.
which the good councillor brought forward, and so we're not separating them now, and at a later date we're going to deal with the resolved boundary.
No,
No.
that's not the
No.
intent of the
No.
recommendation.
We're capturing the whole lot.
Yep.
Yep.
We know at some stage that we're going to have to identify the boundary wherever it is, and there are 6 locations.
Yeah, well, that boundary will get identified for us by
Yes, yes.
another.
We know where they are.
Another
They just need
authority.
to be placed in an area that the main road feels that
Approval.
it's safe for traffic and most appropriate.
All right, so point 4, Justin, just seek approval to apply excess funds, any excess funds. To locality signage.
Locality.
Seek approval from who are we seeking approval from? Russell? Works for Queensland?
It'll be from the funding body, yeah.
I think there's latitude within that. I think the one thing you need to be aware of is you really can't bank the signs. Western Queensland is paying for the installation of signs, so you couldn't buy 3 extra signs and then just put them in storage. You'd have to install them. So that might go to Councillor Mather's point about if you put the signs in there, there's an awareness of where that boundary is. According to TMR, those standard signs are $5,000 each to install. So you'd have to lift it up and put it somewhere else if that proved to be the case, but it might be a fairly low cost bet to put them on the existing boundaries and get your point across about where the boundaries are.
Right, so do we need to seek approval for that, or are we just able to apply that excess?
So that would be $30,000 worth of signs,
Yep.
according to like TMR. So it'd be $70,000 towards locality signs.
Right, okay.
Can I just ask to clarify, what is the amount of funding we're looking at for the boundary signage in total?
It's 100,000 total.
100,000. And do we know for sure how much it is for 6 signs?
Well, that's what we've been advised by TMR, so I have to take them at their word on that.
Yeah. 5,000, okay. Just one last question, Mr Mayor. Are you aware, and I've heard this, I can't confirm it, whether we do have any signage that was left over from amalgamation day?
Councillors, sorry to interject. I'm just thinking, Councillor Hutton and I have been talking on the side. It may be worthwhile getting another report coming back to council as to how we can better spend that $70,000 surplus as opposed to making a decision now on the fly. I think a report from the officers as to the best way that money could be spent, which is a significant amount of money out of the total funding. It might be better to get a separate report to come back, but the rest of the recommendation stands, but we just want a separate report as to how the surplus funds could best be spent, Mr CEO.
Mr Mayor, I think, as we know, it's a closing window.
I know it's a time-sensitive thing,
on
yeah.
us, and even another couple of weeks out of the remaining 7 is going to inhibit our ability to do that. I think the intent of the funding was for signage to be delivered. Point 4 gives officers the authority to acquire and erect as much signage as possible, as was the original intention for the available funds.
I would be happy to take direction on
Well,
Sorry.
so my only comment to that is that the funding wasn't given to us for signage. The funding was given us to Works for Queensland, which covers a myriad of opportunities. Livingstone directed it towards signage, and in this case, where there's not a need for $100,000 worth of signage, I just think that going back and say, like, may it be that, you know, Works for Queensland, which is currently funding works on galleries, the $70,000 may be able to be supported in a current endeavour that we're already covering under Works for Queensland, where we know that there has been budget creep, or maybe it is something that's actually an addition that builds on something that we're already doing. But while I accept that, yes, we told the government we would spend $100,000 on signage, I don't think they will be the same committed to the fact that it had to be $100,000 as we may be, in that their Works for Queensland bucket of money that's provided to council is about economic stimulus and about response. It's not necessarily like it wasn't a funding round that was directed towards producing signage outcomes in communities.
Yeah, and without wishing to put too much pressure on the officers, Mr CEO, we do have the ability to call special meetings, which is this one. So if we can get some response quickly, we can get it knocked over, essentially.
Can I just ask the question then, to your point, councillor, whether that's a broader sphere of potential expenditure, because I know infrastructure has shortfalls in some of their projects, and if it was to be the locality signage, what that would be. I mean, I've got design already. It'll be a smaller version of what we've looked at for each of those localities. And councillor, your point, it could be Byfield. You tell me where you want them. I've heard, you know, Keppel Sands wants, they want better recognition. There's the caves. There are other options out there. So if you're happy to articulate your preferences for where such signs were to go, if we were to dedicate the funds in that direction, then we should be able to deliver those in short order.
And if I could just add, I guess for consideration, given that we've got, I don't know whether it's 2 outstanding resolutions, but one of them certainly that we agreed as a council to invest in signage, which I think Councillor Hutton and Councillor Rees, you'd remember we talked about, you know, directional signage for a surfing beach, and so there was a commitment from the table that signage was something that we were deficient in. Like, we agreed on that as a table. Here's potentially, and I don't want to suggest that it has to be that, but I hope we don't lose sight of something that we've identified in the past, we haven't yet delivered on. Here's potential money that could go towards achieving that, which would be, I would think, a move forward, ultimately.
Thank you, Mr Deputy. Councillors, in raising the issue, my thinking wasn't necessarily that we move outside the parameters of signage. All I was basically suggesting was that we get a report back from the officers as to the best way that excess money or surplus money could be spent, whether that's on signage or indicating that there's a surf beach somewhere or whatever. Happy to entertain all of that. I just am a little bit uncomfortable saying use the excess for signage. I'd just like something a little bit more concrete than that.
So number 4 seems to reflect what you're just saying.
There's two number fours now. It's the original, and then beneath that is what we understand for the latest position. So we would delete
All
the
right.
top 4.
Yeah, delete 4A.
Couldn't we just, would we be able to just, where it says within the Shire on the first 4, just, and then say, and officers provide further report, and to combine the two of them? Is that possible?
Very possible.
If the intention is to limit it to signage, then yes. If I understood correctly, we hope so. Because there might be other alternatives to signage. But perhaps I missed that when I was looking at that.
Change the word locality. Say that you're not specifying.
And or other elements.
To,
So it's picking up on Mr. CEO's point. And the Mayor's point, I believe, and Nigel's point, we didn't want to constrain it purely to signage, so is there a way that we can articulate it that it captures perhaps some other elements that would be within the scope of the funding, both signage and or other elements of, is it placemaking or what is it?
Well, that's right.
4B was a bit-
I thought 4B did that, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
4B was good.
4B was good?
Yep.
So make it broader than sort of narrower, and then we cover all bases.
So 4B would also cover signage if you wanted to let it be signage.
Didn't come back.
Cover anything.
I went too far. So,
Application of the excess funds.
so we want both.
4A goes,
I will get rid of that.
yeah. So do you think that captures it, councillors?
I think there's a word missing there.
Yeah, we can do that. We should do that, yeah. No. So the CEO's just raised the point, councillors, that in point 1, we should be endorsing the TMR format as the preferred signage approach. So point 1, Justine, endorse the TMR road signage format. Road signage format as the preferred approach to be delivered. Within the works for Queensland timeframe limitations. Better, thank you. All right. Any further discussion, councillors? All right, so we'll go into debate on this. We might just come out
Can we
of,
just look it over one more time, Mr Mayor?
yeah, we'll just
because-
come out of closed session, councillor, not closed session, out of resume standing orders, if that's all right. Moved councillor Mather, thank you. All in favour? Okay.
So just changing it so it says council recommendation instead of officer's recommendation because it has deviated.
Do you have to float those down the other one first?
So councillors will go into debate. Can I get a mover and a seconder for this one, please? Moved councillor Mather, seconded councillor, I think councillor Bello beat you, councillor Eastwood. All right, councillor Mather, did you wish to speak to the proposed, the alternate
Just very
resolution?
briefly, Mr Mayor, I think over the past 9 months, this has had a flogging, if that's the right word, to get it right. And there have been a lot of people with a lot of ideas, conflicting in some cases, but overall we've done our homework. We've gone into bat for the people of the Shire to identify who they are, where they are, and hopefully now that we can just get on with business, because in thanks to the table and the officers who've contributed to this, we haven't always agreed, and I think that's a good, healthy sign, and if it means getting it right. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Mather. Anyone speaking against the alternate resolution? Or would anyone else like to speak for it? Councillor Hutton.
In speaking for this motion, I think it's important to recognise that the decision we're making here today is about expediency as a pathway to achieving an outcome which for many will probably be short of expectation around the desire to see enhanced signage and to see enhanced wayfinding for our community. And to reflect back on Councillor Mather's comment around a 9-month journey to come to generic Department of Transport and main road signage is probably not a track that most people would see as being a full circle or necessarily a heightened outcome, but rather something that perhaps could have been achieved in the first month. But the reality is that while there is that unknown outcome around where the boundaries of our Shire lay in the long term, investing significant funds on our community's behalf to provide such signage would be economically irresponsible. And if we are going to invest in significant signage, then it obviously has to be road tested and have the expressed approval of the community, and I don't think that that can be achieved in such a short time. So I believe that this is a step in the right direction and a step that those in the community who have sought signage to identify the boundaries of the Shire will appreciate. But I don't believe this is the long-term outcome. I don't believe this is the vision splendid of the wayfinding or a ringing reflection of what our community looks like or wants to be known for. However, it's better than where we've been, it's better than what we've got. And in taking this step forward, what we're doing is ensuring that in the time when there is some indecision or some uncertainty, that we're not making an investment that we later regret or that we later have to turn track on. And I think that's a responsible decision to make, and that's why I'll be voting for it today.
Thank you, councillor Hutton. All right, councillors, in the absence of any further comments, he says, with a rising inflection in his voice denoting a question, we'll go to the vote on this one. So we've got a... Yeah, sum up, councillor Mather, by all means.
Just very quickly, and thank you, councillor Hutton, for your comments. I'll take them on board. Members, the Shire is 118 years old this year. We've been around, we've had some bruises over the time. Those people have been in the Shire, and I think most of you have for many of those years, know what we've been up against. And we are still facing the demons. We're still looking down the track as to what our future is going to look like. But at this point in time, we have a statement to make, and we are saying, this is who we are, this is where we are, take note, because we've got some big things coming. So thank you, girls and boys, for helping us out today and supporting this motion today, because we're going a long way to making that stand in our society and supporting the people who have supported us. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Mather, and I support councillor Hutton's comments in thanking the officers for the report. All right, councillors, we've got a mover in councillor Mather, a seconder and Deputy Mayor Bello. All in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously, thank you. All right, 10.2, councillors, is the Marlborough signage and placemaking report. And again, I think we might go in suspend standing orders on this one to discuss it less formally. So I'll move that. All in favour? Thank you, councillors. Carried unanimously. All right, so Mr CEO, would you or one of the officers like to quickly speak to the report?
Happy to, Mr Mayor, and I'm sure Russell and Sonia can answer any questions councillors have. Russell's report proposes 4 options for councillors' considerations. We understand that there's some reasonably strong thinking amongst councillors about which option to choose, and we have, in anticipation, therefore prepared an alternative recommendation should councillors wish to consider that aligns with a combination of option 2 and option 3.
Thank you, Mr CEO. All right, councillors, I propose to do what we did with the last report and maybe work through each of the numbered components within the recommendation. So at this stage, the recommendation is that council resolve to determine which of the following options to proceed with in order to comply with Works for Queensland funding requirements in the delivery of signage and placemaking outcomes at Marlborough. 1. Endorse proposed signage design concepts, refer attachment 1, and proceed with manufacturing and delivery of said signage. 2. Continue with the project but with more limited signage in lieu of place-related improvements within the township. Is everyone okay and on board with what that means?
Describe that, please, Mr Mayor.
Essentially, it's saying that you continue with the project, but with more limited signage. Limited in what context, I guess, is the question. But whatever I'm reading in that, then whatever savings we make on that might go towards place-related improvements. Have I got that correct, Mr CEO? Rightio.
Mr Mayor, does that rule out anything else that, like murals or?
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't, okay.
So it's basically saying that rather than the quantum of money being spent and the number of signs in the original proposal, that be limited, either in number or amount of money spent, and that whatever isn't spent could potentially go to place-making improvements.
Mm-hmm.
Item 3 is forego signs altogether in lieu of placemaking improvements. And point 4, forego all improvements and return the assigned funds to Works for Queensland, or, if possible, reassign to other Livingstone Works for Queensland projects. So, councillors, as I said, we might just go through these 1 to 4, starting at the top. So, I guess, is there an appetite to endorse the proposed signage design concepts and proceed with manufacturing and delivery? I'll open the floor on this one, councillors.
We need to get the screen right, Mr Mayor.
Are we still wobbling around? Sorry. There we go. That's it there, councillor. Yep.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I just have a couple of questions in relation to the currently pre-ordered aluminium sheeting, factory booking and preparation. This was an email we received today. The current costs are $15,000 plus GST. I just want to know, is that the total amount of loss if we did not proceed? Yeah.
Total estimated sunk cost on that is about 56,000.
So 56,000, okay. And so the work was subcontracted to a particular entity. I'm unsure if I can say their name at this point. Was a tender confirmed or finalised with that entity? A tender? So anything?
The primary contractor?
Yes.
Yes.
It was. So this is a subcontractor, and we don't need tenders for a subcontractor?
No.
Okay, alrighty. And if we were to cancel the contract regarding the terms and conditions of that cancellation of the existing purchase order, apparently the existing purchase order raised is for $149,301.90. Could you explain to me what will happen if that is cancelled?
Well, I assume that the contractor will submit an invoice for payment for those costs accrued today.
So just to be clear, councillor, so that I'm also clear, the total allocation of funding through Works for Queensland was of 149,000,
It was 140,000.
140,000, thank you. And what councillor Friend is saying is that if this particular proposal stops now, we'll be out of pocket $56,000 for the
Correct.
current contractor and the work that they've done.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I will point out, if I can, that the acquisition of the metal occurred in anticipation of this project and the boundary sign project, because metal supply lines are extremely doubtful at the moment. So the subcontractor in that case, is the prime contractor on the boundary signs, had acquired that metal on the basis that they didn't know if they'd be able to meet the project timelines if they didn't secure that metal.
And may I ask where exactly that contractor is up to in the producing of a sign?
They were ready to produce the signs 2 weeks ago, and they currently have staff who do not have a job on hand, and that particular vendor is now trying to renegotiate some other contracts that they had foregone in lieu of this contract.
Could we get a copy of whatever the contract is? And I'd like to see. If we could be provided with a copy of the contract, because is it $56,000 that we're up for and we've got nothing out of it? That's really what it is, isn't it?
No, I wouldn't agree that we have nothing out. We have the design and we have the materials, and we're ready to go,
Yes.
which is what you would have with a normal project.
Okay, and let's go to attachment 1, Mr. Mayor. The attachment 1, let's be clear on what we are voting on here, because it's not the ball.
The attachment 1 in this report, if we could just go there, please, Justine, on is the ball, that one on the top.
It's not, that's not what they want.
No, I understand what you're saying, but I mean, in terms of the point 1 in this recommendation, that's what we're discussing at the moment.
And that's what the materials
That's what the materials have been purchased for,
been purchased
and the
for.
design was around, yeah.
And we're going to lose that 56 grand if we don't go ahead with that, pretty much.
If you don't go ahead with any of these projects and we don't replace them, well, I mean, if you don't, these are all about the sign design, so yes, those will all be sunk costs, and the ball is part of that as well.
And see, the people hadn't designed, the people hadn't determined, and we hadn't adopted what the people had determined through their voting. I mean, I can't see why we should be up for this sort of money if we haven't given a conclusive, this is what we want. We haven't done that.
Someone does.
No, we haven't, not this table.
Councillor, we did go to the community several times, and the first consultation had a sign similar to that was proposed, just plain white letters announcing Marlborough, and that was endorsed by 15 out of 15 respondents out of that survey, and I think 100 and something people had looked at the site, and only 15 had responded. And then 14 out of 15 supported the other one at the town entrance. And then we went back again with the ball, and we had a much lower response, but it was still a favourable response. And the ball was a suggestion that came out of the placemaking reference group, because originally it had balls on that town entrance sign, and it was thought that it'd be better to have something out on the highway. So that's what the origins of that design are. That was a consultative process, and that was the outcome. So I'm only responding to what that feedback was.
Well, something I would imagine, and I don't know what the other members feel, but to finalise it and put the stamp on the order, that would have had to come back to the table, say we endorse that. For the officers' information, there's still a lot of heartache up there and people were not happy. They're saying, how are we going to maintain this? Who's going to whippersnip? Who's going to wash it over? What does it tell them? What does it tell the people going past? I went to Marlborough yesterday and I had 17 people under a tree, and this is what they want. All of them. It's as simple as that.
It may be, councillor, and unfortunately I was not privy to that conversation. We went through that other process. We also had officers that went out there for an open day out there, so these things were shopped several times. At no time did anybody indicate that that existing sign was all they wanted.
Well, they hadn't seen that. I just took the series of things up.
Well, that is an existing sign.
Yes, it is. That's the sign that's on the Perkins Road,
Correct.
on the entrance
Correct.
in there. Did you at any time have a look at how many signs or where they were along the highway? Did you ever have a look to see what was there?
Councillor Mather, I'm
It's
wondering
important,
where
isn't
this is going, because ultimately we're looking at whether we're going to endorse a
Well, we're
proposed
looking
signage
at
concept.
looking down the barrel of spending $56,000 for nothing, Mr Mayor.
I understand that, councillor, but
Can I just have this question? Just
Yeah,
this
all right.
one question. Did at any time you have a look along the highway to see what signage was there, to see what we could complement?
Only on the way up, not further north from there, but bear in mind that the Works for Queensland funding is for the construction of distinctive welcome signage at the entrance of Marlborough on the highway.
Okay. Well,
So that's the limitation on this particular signage. So that 40,000 can only be spent on signage.
okay. Well, if you come up from the Sutherland, you would have seen 3 signs, 2 of which says welcome to Marlborough. And if you're coming from the northern end, you would have found 3 more signs coming to the town that says welcome to Marlborough. All main roads are pretty this law. It's just a little bit different to the others, but it's got that. This is what they want. I'm saying, I don't think, I won't say more than this, Mr Mayor, but I don't think that we've gone the right way about getting this job done.
Well, councillor
I think, and this is where we have to go, Mr Mayor, to get a policy done so that we know clearly what we have to do in the future so there's no confusion.
Well, councillor Mather, the CEO has got that in hand, and there will be some
Yes,
discussion coming
I'm glad
to.
he has.
Yeah, let me finish, please. There's a discussion coming to the table in future, in the next couple of weeks, around governance on these sorts of things. So that will be discussed in that particular forum. Going forward now, I'd like to address the issues before us, not necessarily how we got to this particular situation. We've got to deal with this, what's before us today. And yes, we will have a $56,000 bill, so you won't have $140,000 potentially to spend. You'll only have 84. So, councillor Friend.
Thank you. The report states that $55,000 is for the highway entrance sign. That's that sign, the white Marlborough sign without the bull. Is that correct? If we don't, and this business contractor has bought all the metal, and it won't cost any more than that $55,000 as estimated in the actual report. If that's the case, and we're going to lose $56,000 full stop with nothing to show for it, what our other councillors' thoughts are on proceeding with that particular sign, and then and the rest in placemaking in lieu of.
We've still got to pay $11,000 to cut it down, is that right?
Sorry, councillor?
We've still got to pay $11,000.
That's the other side.
Okay, all right.
You would recapture a lot of those sunk costs if that sign were to be constructed, because most of that sunk cost has been directed towards that sign.
Can I just say though, if we go ahead with signage, of some type and we use that same material, we'll pick up that 15 grand. We'll still end up using it for another job. No, I'm talking about the $15,000. That's the cost of the sheet metal that we have. That's part of the 56,000. So we've effectively paid for it, and we can use that in other signage. Will you agree with that, Russell? Depending on their design, obviously.
Well, yes, we could. We'd be going through another design process to do so. Not for this project, obviously.
The other thing I'm confused by is $56,000 is a third of the entire job. That just seems extremely steep. That's all. I'm just wondering what we would have got for, what we'd have supplied for 56,000.
That includes the design, the engineering, and then some of the materials as well. And then, part of it was ball design as also.
It's just in my experience in the sign industry, we could have bought a machine for this and done it ourselves.
If I can, Mr. Chair, yeah. I'm just curious, Russell, in the commentary there, so it's gone under the terms of works for Queensland, there's 40,000 allocations specifically directed towards the provision of distinctive welcome signage at the highway turn-off. So there was 40,000 of that total 140,000 that was for distinctive welcome signage at the highway. If in the event the table agreed to allocate $40,000 towards a distinctive signage, and whatever that reflected, that's great. And then the balance of that was put towards other elements that are not distinctive welcome signage at the highway turn-off. What would your thoughts be towards that? I'm just curious, and how would that work with the existing agreement we've got with the contractor? So there'd still be $40,000 worth of work. Is there any?
The estimate on that is apparently 55,000. So it's above the 40, but it's intended to be obviously a highly visible, distinctive sign. And then if the balance were to go to other things, that's the prerogative of council. I'm just responding to, we did the survey about a replacement sign for at the entrance of town. They supported that as well. So I'm just going off the direction of feedback from the community at that time.
Just a follow-up question then. So not wanting to go too deeply into the contractual elements that may be outside of other than a confidential meeting, but if the $55,000 was supported by the table for the fairly significant sign as opposed to the 40,000, do you believe that that would be an acceptable outcome with the contractor that's entered into council? Is there scope to sort of renegotiate there? And
I think that they would be happy to have that as the outcome. In terms of
and then look at other elements that we could
the other,
that would be
the other elements, and that's where I'm seeking direction on, because we're obviously limited on time, and that's articulated in the report as to what the options are. So.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and the balance of that, so $55,000 on that highway sign, taking into consideration the contractor, the products, materials already purchased, etc. So that would leave what, $85,000 for other placemaking or beautification of the area.
Yeah, it may be less than that, depending on how that sunk costs, because there were some costs dedicated to the other design, but not anywhere near as much. So probably the majority of it, yes.
Right, councillors, any other questions of the officers?
Sorry, Russell, just so I can get it in my head. Effectively, if we reduce that sign there, if we would have agreed that we're going to do one sign down into Marlborough, which is a reflection on how we got here in the start, where they're asking for a replacement of an existing sign. If we would have put one sign into Marlborough, if we reduce it away from that 55, we effectively lose that in sunk costs, virtually with the contractor.
You do, yes.
So we got the conundrum, I guess, of that sign there. A, do we know whether the Marlborough people are going to be proud of that and think, wow, they've done a great job? If they're not, well, then we reduce that down to something that they like, but we lose money in the process virtually through the contract that's been entered into. So we appease the Marlborough residents by having a sign that they're happy with, but we might throw away 20,000, 30,000, something to that effect. Given that the main road signs that we looked at before were worth about $5,000 to $6,000, that's a fair gap between the 55 and what those signs were. So there's a lot of signage to shrink virtually if Councillor Mather is saying that they don't want that. I'm mindful of, I guess, the Marlborough community in this, but I'm also mindful that we reduce that sign and we're actually just throwing money away at the same time, virtually.
That's correct.
So in some ways, I guess I'm looking to try and bring the Marlborough community on the journey of we want to do you proud and we want you to be happy with what you get, because that's why we're here ultimately, and that's why you guys have set about doing what you've endeavoured to do. But in order to do that, I don't like the thought of throwing money away at all. So I guess that's the conundrum that we're in.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Mr Deputy. And I guess I'm confused, also the normal councillors in terms of this one, because according to the officer's report that we received recently, there was a number of members of the community in Marlborough that supported this signage. And now, based on a meeting Councillor Mather's had yesterday at Marlborough, there seems to be an equal number of people who are not in favour. So it's extremely confusing, I have to say.
Mr Mayor,
And there's still 20 members that we haven't heard from.
yeah. And so I guess I just want to come back to point one, so I can sort of keep working through the process here, councillors. Are we endorsing the proposed signage design concepts and proceed with manufacturing and delivery of said signage, bearing in mind attachment 1? Right now, attachment 1 has 3 signs. So are we looking at just the one sign here with the bull on it in Marlborough? Without the bull? Councillor Mather.
Mr Mayor, they don't like any of them. They thought the wanted one was absolutely ridiculous. What does it say? They don't like any of them.
Yeah,
Look, I don't see that we're going to lose money. As Councillor Watson said, if we bought that material, it's ours. Let's keep it and put it to some other use.
well, I beg to differ, councillor, but we will lose the money on design. That was about 20 or
Well,
30,000.
I guess the way the process has gone, we've lost the money because of the process. But why make another mistake by putting up something they don't want?
Well, that's
I mean, every councillor had an opportunity to come with me. I mean, I'm not bringing back all the tidings of what the people say. All I know is what they don't want.
yeah,
When they talked about it, no doubt themselves, they said, well, who's going to be looking after it? Who's going to wash it? Who's going to whippersnip around it?
no one's disputing what you're bringing to the table, councillor. I guess the interesting conundrum here is that, as I said previously, there were a number of people that supported the concept and there are a number of people who don't. And so-
On face value, Mr Mayor, it's something new. It looks pretty, but it's not practical. I mean, we try to put infrastructure into our shire that is not going to be a burden to us down the track. Everything we do, everything we put out there, we've got to clean it, fix it, repair it, replace it. We don't want another thing to have to clean up. We just want something that's simple, welcoming and acceptable by the people. It's their choice. They had the choice.
All right. So, councillors, I keep coming back to point one here. Are we endorsing the proposed signage design concept?
If that's option 1, Mr Mayor, I'm not going along with it.
I kind of got that, Councillor Mather.
for my benefit, Mr Chair, that's the entirety of the,
The three signs there in attachment
Yep.
1, as I understand
Yep,
it,
okay.
councillor. Yep. You may well feel inclined to endorse part of it, being the sign, but not the 3. Okay? So the answer to 1, I'm assuming councillors across the board, is no. If you want to take the signage, the Marlborough sign, the letters themselves, that's not point 1. That's something we can build into a new resolution if you want to do that. But ultimately, we're not endorsing the proposed signage as set out in attachment 1. Am I hearing that correctly?
That is correct, Mr Mayor.
All right. Councillor Hutton?
Yep, I'm happy to not take point 1.
All right, thank you. All right.
I'm also
so-
happy to take point 1.
Sorry?
I was also happy to take point 1. No, sorry, not take
Not
point
take-
1. My God.
I sort of got that too, Councillor Hutton, Councillor Watson. So point 2, continue with the project but with more limited signage in lieu of place-related improvements within the township. So if I can just refer to Russell here for a moment, what does that exactly mean, please?
As we've been discussing, that would be some subset of 1. There's been discussion here about perhaps just going with that entryway Marlborough sign and foregoing the other 2 signs. It's whatever option you want in that regard, and then I would have to take some direction on what your preference would be for other improvements in the township, understanding that there's no real time to design anything else. There's possibility you could build a shade structure, but again, everybody's struggling with construction services to be able to do it. So whether it can be done in the time frame or not, another matter. And I've heard from facilities. I mean, they had one on order for 6 weeks, and it's still not on the horizon. So it's a bit of a gamble on that one. If we plant trees, we'd have to come to some arrangement for people to be able to water the trees. We do have a contract for management of the park, so it could possibly be an extension of that if we planted trees. Those are just some of the options.
Excuse me, Russell, we could still get asked for an extension though, couldn't we?
There's discussion about that, but it's my understanding that it's not Works for Queensland's interest in providing much of an extension, 2 months at the most, if you can prove that you're ready to go on something.
Through you, Mr Mayor, what about mural on the toilet block? Something that is not modern but more country, with windmills and cows and cowboys, perhaps.
It's, I mean, that's a possibility that we could engage somebody. Again, I'd have to be concerned about what the design would be. I'd have to go through an entire process on that.
I think you better give me back those papers. I think we're getting shoved into you late.
Some of them you'd have to spend on normal signage as well, though, wouldn't it? You'd have to have the other signs.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by normal signage.
Well, you won't have the totem pole and you won't have the all wanted one.
Well, no, I understand that. Well, that one's already existing. I mean, you've got the option of putting another one of those at the
Other end.
northern entrance.
Yes.
I don't know if I don't know. Those were manufactured several years ago, so I don't know if the format for that is still around.
That wouldn't be hard to put up with that, Rhodes?
Couldn't tell you, I don't have the artwork. So.
No.
So,
It's just a little complicated, that's what I'm
No,
saying.
it's not complicated.
Oh, I have to talk to
sorry, councillors, we'll just keep the conversation a little bit formal. Can we just quickly duck to, as soon as my thing comes back online, to point 3 and 4, please, just for the purposes of elimination. So are we saying in point 3, we want to forego the signs altogether in lieu of placemaking improvements?
No, well, we need those two. We just need those two.
So
and the
that's a no
others-
from you, councillor?
Yes, Mr
Yep.
Mayor.
All right.
It's a no, Mr Mayor.
No, councillor Watson?
It's no from me.
Righto. Councillor Bello, are we foregoing all signs altogether in lieu of placemaking improvements?
I'm trying to keep up with this. I thought Councillor Mather was just saying there is the need for,
Go with signs altogether. In other words, no signs.
no, but weren't you pointing out that they were requesting some of those signs?
Yeah, northern and southern entrance.
Yeah,
Doesn't-
I've just jumped to point 3 though, councillor. I'm trying to eliminate so I can come back to point 2 and prosecute that a bit further. So are we saying we want in point 3 forego signs altogether? In
No.
lieu of placemaking? No?
No, I don't
Okay.
believe.
No. Okay. Councillor Hutton?
I'm uncertain, to be honest. I think the challenge that we face here is the community of Marlborough knows that it wants growth or it wants more people to come, but it's not quite sure how to get them or what it looks like to achieve that. And so the good council has told us that coming from the south, there's at least 2 signs that say welcome to Marlborough. If you come from the north, there's at least 3 signs saying welcome to Marlborough. To my mind, another 2 signs saying welcome to Marlborough is not the answer. Regardless whether it's a bull with white letters or whether it's the generic council-produced prior ones that the councillor has shopped around yesterday. So I don't necessarily believe that we shouldn't forego the signs altogether, but I also take on board the advice that's provided in the report that says that it's an improbable achievement to achieve placemaking improvements of the scale and the value within the scope of the funding. So if we were to forgo the signs, then I believe that we'd probably be looking at a version of option 4 where we'd be forgoing the majority of all improvements and returning funds to say better to return funds knowing that we get Works for Queensland every year and spend some time and do it and get a good outcome rather than do something that might, you know.
All right. So just interpreting that, point 3, you're saying if we forego the signs and go to placemaking improvements, we may not actually achieve the placemaking improvements anyway. So you don't support number 3, no, because of the second bit. Okay. So point 4, councillors, and sorry I'm jumping around here, but I'm just trying to come back to what's going to be the core discussion here. So point 4 is forego all improvements and return the assigned funds to Work for Queensland, or if possible, reassign to other Livingstone Works for Queensland projects. Is there any support for this one?
No, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Councillor Friend?
No, Mr Mayor, I would not like to see the funds go back at this stage. I mean, even if we were to send all of the funds back, then we'd still be out of pocket $56,000. And we'd still have to pay that money, including sending the funds back.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Friend. Councillor Mather?
Mr Mayor, just to add on to what I've just said. The question was put to me yesterday. We're talking about signs. If there's any money left over, how much money have we got? If there's any money left over, what happens to that? Does it go back? And I said, well, we don't, not in the habit of sending money back, but if there's any opportunity to do things around the town, and that was put up by the officer as well, whether they be trees or bench parks in the park, like Anzac Day, there were concrete tables and chairs there, but they were short. And the Lions president who was there said, gee, a couple of those would go down well. So I think by the time you look at your 140, you take off your 2 signs, you take off your metal, but if we buy the metal, if we do, and see what you've got left. You've got enough for probably 1 or 2. And as a mural, that could go on the amenities block. Money
Alright.
spent.
Okay. So in interpreting that, you're still a no?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Watson?
Look, I'm still torn because we're talking about putting a sign up that says Marlborough, but we all know that the township's 1 kilometre in. There's nothing there. This Marlborough sign's never going to work while we have nothing that says there's actually a township behind that service station. This is the problem. We're not addressing that issue. That's the whole crux of why we're talking about this. It's not just about the sign, but it's the sign telling people what is there. And I'm sorry, Russell, but I can't agree with your other signs with the layout. But in principle, if they were better laid out or different in some way, it would possibly get the people to turn left into the township. This is the thing, we're trying to get people to turn into the township, aren't we?
But your point may well be covered in further discussion on point 2, councillor Watson, with respect.
All right.
So point 4, though, is foregoing all improvements.
No,
in terms
I
of-
can't agree with number 4.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bello?
At this juncture of time, it's former. I'm not in support of 4, but I recognise it would be a challenge to achieve something meaningful and something that we can be proud of, and something that doesn't tarnish the reputation of the North Queensland people. But I believe the alternative to give it back is, I think, would be a step backwards. So I'm up for the challenge, and I believe as an organisation we can achieve great things. We've shown that in the past, and I have every confidence that we can. So I'm prepared to roll the dice and go with it.
All right, so no for point 4 for you, Councillor Bello. All right, Councillor Hutton.
It would hardly seem like it matters, Mr Mayor.
Nonetheless, we value your opinion, Councillor.
Just like everyone, I have no desire to see funds returned, but at the same time, if a criticism could be levied of people willingly spending money beyond their needs or without true purpose, without a true expectation about what they're doing, I wouldn't want that levied against this council. I wouldn't want to be part of a group that made a decision to say, hey, we'll just find a way to spend the money so that we don't have to give it back. I think that if you haven't got a true purpose behind what you're spending the money on, you return it. Works for Queensland is a guaranteed funding round for the next 4 years, so it's not like we're not going to get funding in future rounds. It's better to be honest and say you've either got need or you haven't got need, or you've got the project or you haven't got the project, and if you can't find a way to massage it into other Works for Queensland projects that you're already doing that could benefit from it, then I'd hate to see us just, I don't think we should be frivolous with the state's money, just as I don't believe we should be frivolous with our community's money.
All right, thanks, Councillor. All right.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, can I say something? Nigel, I agree with what you're saying, but I think that the township needs something now. They need support from us now.
Happy to debate when we have a motion.
Yeah, we don't have a motion yet, and we're still staying the orders at the moment.
And your thoughts, Mr Chair?
What are we left with, Mr Mayor?
Well, at the moment, we look like getting rid of point 4. All right, so we've got point 2 remaining. Councillor Eastwood, I beg your pardon. I've been
Second time in a row, Mr Mayor, but it must be where I'm sitting.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I think we need to get rid of point 4, only in that as the money's already been spent. And I can't see that as a council we can use the community money and have to give that over out of our own pocket. I think we need to, I wouldn't say there's been mistakes being made, but we've gone down this process maybe a little bit wrongly, but now we need to stand up and make it right and come up with a solution today that's going to work.
Thanks, Councillor, and my apologies.
Mr Mayor, I think if you go back to the intro, there needs to be some adjustment with the wording there.
Where are you? What intro are you talking about, Councillor?
Well, what have we got left?
You've got what's there at the moment, Councillor, is under Officer's recommendation that Council resolve to continue with the project but with more limited signage in lieu of place-related improvements within the township in order to comply with Works for Queensland funding requirements in the delivery of signage and placemaking outcomes at Marlborough.
Are we going to have a heading, when it comes to the minutes, are we going to have a heading on that? Sorry? Yes.
These will
but
be the minutes.
It doesn't say what the project is. The project.
It will sit under that report heading though, Councillor, Marlborough signage
that's
and
what I'm
placemaking.
saying. That's going to be the lead in.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That's all I needed to know.
Question, if I could, Mr Chair.
Go for it, Councillor.
Just to the officers here, picking up on Councillor Watson's comments just about in terms of what the sign could look like, or is there scope, flexibility to tinker with that, massage that in some way that we can see something that perhaps is more conducive to the attitudes of the community, I guess, importantly. So just, excited to think of what opportunity there is there.
My recommendation would be we use the same sign format, but then we put up a higher sign that says 1 km with an arrow.
And that's what we talked about more than earlier today. Yeah, I know, but that might be okay, but even something like this would have had an arrow on it, line or something like that, you know?
All right.
Sorry, Russell, can I just ask a quick question? You showed us a sign a while back that had the Marlborough across the top, and I think it might have been a concrete plinth on the bottom or something, where it says you're entering Durumble country or something. Where did that go?
That was the boundary signs. So
That was the boundary
that was
signs.
welcome to Livingstone Shire. And so
Okay. So is that something that we could still look at as a placement sign?
in this location.
Yes.
So what specifically are you suggesting the welcome to and?
I'm not 100% sure. I just know that.
Why would you have it there, councillor, and not right across the Shire? Because the whole Shire really is Durumble country.
Yes, but it's. Oh. Yeah. All right. No, that's right. Okay. No, it's fine. I just had an idea, and I just thought I just liked the way that it was laid out. That's all. I was trying to find an alternative.
We can still talk
You can
about
certainly
this.
go back to those signs and put them in.
So councillors, looking at the recommendation again, are you happy that it is sufficiently tight? Because we're resolved to continue with the project, but with more limited signage in lieu of place-related improvements. I mean, what, more limited signage, what does that mean?
So, Mr Mayor, within that particular resolution, are we going to then discuss alternatives such as murals, park benches, etc.? Are we going to note what we were after, or just, leave it up in the air for placemaking?
Well, look, I think it's somewhat risky being too specific, councillor, in terms of placemaking, because we might resolve something here, and for time reasons or budgetary reasons that may not be possible, and therefore that limits the officers to do something outside of that. Councillor Bello? Councillor Bello has the floor, Councillor Mather.
Picking up on your point on not to be too specific, but what is I'd be looking for is the confirmation of the signage component.
Yep.
Which I think has really been the whole bone of contention, and it seems to me as if we're agreeing on, is it effectively $55,000 on that sign? That appears to be locked in, or we're heading towards locking that in. That's what it would seem like.
I think we need to go around the table on that one, councillor.
Based on what we've knocked out thus far. Otherwise, what direction is there where, with more limited signage, what does that actually specify? So it would be good to land on what the signage component is, and then the balance is for other elements within the placemaking or within the funding scope.
Yep.
That's probably where I'm... And the only other question, I guess, back to this particular sign, Russell, what's preventing that sign from being altered in terms of if there was a sense that there was going to be one that was felt to be more welcome by the community? Is there any scope to work with that, or is it locked in down at the actual contractor who's virtually punched it in, built it? So, or have we lost that chance to come up with other design potential?
Well, it's basically just a matter of pressing the button on the laser cutter to now do that. That's the point where we're at.
Yes.
So if we were going to do anything else other than this, it's going to have to go through an additional design process.
Right.
I really don't think we've got the time.
Okay. So virtually this sign is what's, if the motion's supported, is going to be the one that's delivered to Marlborough without the bull, but the sign itself, and with 1 kilometre or whatever the reference to the...
If that's what you desire, that sign would be probably about, I think, 150 mil off the grass, they'll be on sort of on concrete, so it would be easier to maintain as well.
Councillor, I'm just going to go around the room, councillors, just to sort of get views on this particular sign, if I can. Councillor Eastwood, can I start with you, please? Microphone.
Only because of where the money's gone, and we're going to leave the bull out. I'm happy to continue down that track with that sign.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Mather.
Do I accept the rule? No, Mr. Mayor, because it's not what the people want.
Microphone, sorry.
Can't accept that plan because it's not what the people want, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
And I'm looking at the maintenance as well. It just doesn't say what the people need to say. That's welcome.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Friend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, the people don't want it, and we want to give the people of Marlborough what they want. I have a question in relation to open spaces. I see in this particular photo that we're given that the grass has been cut, etc. So I imagine, and I'm unsure if open spaces actually do mow and whippersnip that particular area in Marlborough. Is anybody aware of that? Okay.
I don't know, councillor. It's my assumption it's TMR property, so I assume that TMR were mowing it.
Sure. I wasn't sure because sometimes council do have the contract on TMR roads to maintain and slash, that's all. Am I happy with the sign? No, the people of Marlborough aren't happy. But am I happy losing $56,000 and just like that? No, I'm certainly not. So I would tend to go with that sign, and then we can look at the extra $85,000 on placemaking within Marlborough.
Thanks, Councillor Friend. Councillor Watson.
There's a question I've been asking since we started this. We've never been told how long this sign is. The other question I do have, though, is there a reason why we chose 1.6 metres high? Is it because of the sheet size? What is it?
It is the sheet size, yeah. So the sign will be about 11 to 12 metres long.
You won't miss that.
About a metre for each letter, roughly.
Thank you.
Councillor Bello.
Whilst I don't want to spend more money on that sign, I'm torn because effectively it seems as if we are settling for something that we're not really happy with, because we want to confine it to $55,000 because potentially the contractor has just got to hit the button and anything spent further on it will be more money spent on that sign. But what amount would be needed to be spent on that to make it something that captures what the people of Marlborough would be supportive of? And it's interesting, in their museum they've got a portion allocated to the bushranger heritage that they have there. How could that, or could that sign, what would the costings look like to incorporate something into that? Is it an extra 5,000? Is it 8,000? Those sort of questions to me could transform that sign into something that, whilst we were never happy about the quantum we spent on it, but at least what we got, we thought, well, gee, it's actually pretty good. It cost us $64,000 and it took us an extra special meeting to get there. That to me would be something I'd like to know before I say that I don't want the sign or I do want the sign. But I guess I've got to give an answer in when the resolution comes, and I'll do that. But at this point, I think there's still a chance to improve it. And it may be some money, but I'd rather improve it if we could, so that would be my preference. It may mean a lesser amount for the other elements of the placemaking, but it means that we end up with a sign perhaps that more people agree with is supported by the Marlborough community.
Thanks, Mr Deputy. Councillor Hutton.
My first thought is that the whole concept of throwing good money after bad, trying to find a solution to something that we don't want to be in. If the signage is proposed isn't answering the question because we're not really sure what the question is or what the answer that the community has as to what they want, then I question whether putting or even saying that we're open to the idea of spending more money. And it is a big assumption to make to say that all the sunk costs that have been attributed can then somehow be reflected in this. I think the challenge is that, you know, they'll have costs across both of the projects that we've provided to them that won't be able to be covered, so that there'll be a portion of that money that just will be covered as sunk cost anyway. I know that the intention will be to try and recoup them, and they'll obviously try and do the right thing, and not as a business partner though, but they will have stock or whatever. Do I take on board the feedback of Councillor Bello? Yes, I think that, you know, if you are going to go down this road, then sure, seek extra time to see if you can enhance what you do have to spend to make sure that that enhancement is achieving an outcome that's most palatable to as many members of the community of Marlborough as you can engage, recognising that engagement is two-way. So, you know, we have had more than 100 contacts out and had limited feedback out in the two different engagement opportunities that are there, which either implies everyone's satisfied, or that no one's satisfied, or that they're just unhappy to be involved in engagement processes. So we could be here in a month's time going, well, they gave us a 2 months extension, but we still don't have anything that we believe any more than 15 members of the Marlborough community are happy with, which creates a challenge in itself. I think that we really are at a point where we're trying to find an answer, and maybe it's time to consider, well, was option 4 the one that we needed to assess? I can imagine that we could order 45 deck chairs or 45 leaning chairs from a supplier and get them, but whether the township of Marlborough needs 45 chairs down the main street simply because that expends the Works for Queensland funds that were set for placemaking in Marlborough, and it's timely and it's achievable, is that the right outcome? Or is it that, you know, we can get 2 tables and chairs and a barbecue, which they may benefit from, but then we're looking for something that just uses the rest of the funding? I am very torn on this, Mr. Mayor, and don't have a particularly strong answer for you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor.
Good,
Councillor
Mr.
Watson.
Mayor, through to Glenn, Councillor Mather.
Yes.
You haven't once said what the people actually want. I mean,
They were happy
that's,
with that. They were happy with that. My question, if you were proposing a ball for the northern entrance, were you proposing one for the southern entrance?
Say that again, Councillor?
From what I understand from the report, the entrance with the ball was for the northern entrance, is that correct?
Southern entrance,
The southern entrance. Only one entrance.
correct.
We've got 2 entrances.
I'm aware of that.
Yes. Yeah, no, I just want to clarify.
All right.
it just means the tourists get the arse end of one part of the cow.
Really deals with one end, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, what did you say?
This feature only deals with one end, one entrance to the town.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm just saying about the funding, that's all.
All right. Councillors, all right, so we still haven't come to terms yet with what we mean by, looking at that resolution, Justine, limited signage. So we're talking about more limited signage in lieu of place-related improvements. So around the table, I'm getting the view that there's not a lot of support for the lettering. So what, Councillor Mather's got the floor. Councillor Watson. All right, well, I'll go to Councillor Watson. Councillor Watson.
Okay, I've got an idea. We're talking about both ends. We've got the big Marlborough one in the middle. We've got 2 entrances to Marlborough. Each end has effectively the sign that we were talking about that was going to go into the township that explains what's in the town. If we put something on either end, that caters to both ends of the town, and at least then we're able to get that direction of pushing people towards the township. What do you think? I don't know what it looks like, but I can see something that effectively at either end of the town lists the things that are in town.
And what sort of dollars are we talking about for that, Russell, just quickly?
I'm not talking about anything massive, by the way. I'm talking, these other signs were 3 metres by 1,600 or something like that. No, I'm talking, yeah, oh, you know the, yes, I understand.
But my recollection is that that totem pole sign wasn't particularly expensive, Russell.
I don't have a quote on that, but I don't believe it's that expensive. I mean, the original intent there was, I think, about, what was it, 6.5, so it wouldn't be much more than that.
6,500.
That was for the metal sign,
Right,
with the bull on it.
okay. All right, councillors. Councillors, can we maybe focus the conversation again back on what we want in the way of signage? I'm getting the view that there's not a lot of support for the big white letters. Is that right? Councillor Eastwood is basically saying no because of the investment already spent.
Yes, because the investment's already spent.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Yeah, sorry. Yep, got that. Yep, sorry. So yes, Councillor Mather's no. Councillor Friend was. Well,
I think she was no.
Yeah,
As well.
Oh, she was yes.
it was yes
Okay,
because of
sorry.
the investment. And you were saying.
I look at it as well. I don't want us to lose the money, but if we're going to do it, we have to do it properly, as Nigel's saying. But I do believe if we had something else that went with the Marlborough sign, then I think we'd achieve what we're trying to do. So yes, I say if we had the Marlborough sign, that's fine, as long as we had something else that pointed people towards that township.
All right. So, Councillor Friend, you were in favour of maintaining the large white sign because of the investment incurred to date. Is that right?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Am I happy about it? No. However, I do believe that I think that it will be maintained over time. Otherwise, we can certainly look at looking into our open spaces, etc. I'm in favour of it for this reason, because the metal, the contractor, is all sorted. If we don't go ahead, we lose that $56,000. It's not replaced by another sign. We lose that and then still have to pay out extra for more signage and or placemaking. And that leaves us with $85,000 for placemaking. As Councillor Mather had said, benches in the park, not necessarily chairs along the street. Murals on the toilet block and other necessary things that the Marlborough people may wish for.
All right, thank you, Councillor Watson. You finger poised there?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, Russell, is there a chance that this artist fellow could come up with something that could go at either ends that does point people towards moving in, driving into Marlborough?
It's possible, councillor, but I guess I'm at a bit of a loss as to what that would be, what would be acceptable.
Yeah, I know. It's a short time and you've got no direction, I understand. Again, I'm happy to offer my services to help you put a design together quickly.
Councillors, just an alternate idea, give up on that, is if we delegate responsibility to the CEO for managing this process, I think he's got an idea of what we're looking for now in terms of what we don't want. So, Mr. CEO, I mean, it's probably a big ask, but I mean, ultimately, I think we'll go round and round the table here for a while, trying to get a resolution on this as to what limited signage means and what alternate placemaking improvements might be. Hang on, Councillor Mather. And then ultimately, we may not get a resolution at all. So I'm just thinking if we can pass this over to you to perhaps either come back to us with some suggestions around this, or alternatively, you manage the process with that type of recommendation in place. Councillors, thoughts? Councillor Mather.
Can I just look at some tweaking there on the,
What's your suggestion, Councillor?
councillor resolved to continue with the project relating to signage improvements within the township, etc. Take away more limited in lieu of place-related improvements.
With respect, I'm not sure how that improves it, councillor.
It takes away the more limited signage in lieu of place-related improvements.
I think the word limited or some synonym of that is important, because we don't want to just open carte blanche comment around signage. So I think that there's a need in the statement there to express our view that we want to actually limit the amount of signage and divert more money towards place-related improvements. That's what I'm getting from the table. Have I got that right? Okay.
No.
Some suggested wording, Mr. CEO, thank you. Okay, Justine, you want to have a crack at that one? There's an alternate motion from the CEO. Councillors, just bear with us for a moment while we get that up on the screen. There's only 3 points, Mr. CEO. Okay, thank you. So the alternate recommendation is that council resolves to continue with the project, but with the white lettered Marlborough signage as shown in attachment 1 only, without the bull figure. We'll discuss that one. Point 2, council endorses the replication of existing welcome to Marlborough signage on the northern and southern approaches to the township, subject to appropriate main roads approval. And thirdly, unexpended funds be redirected to other township improvements, including park enhancement, benches, etc., and a mural on the newly painted toilet block.
Including but not limited to, maybe?
Yep. Good point, council, including but not limited to. All right. So let's work our way through those, councillors. We're still outside of standing orders. So council resolves to continue with the project, but with the white lettered Marlborough signage as shown in attachment 1 only, without the bull figure. I got the view that there was a mixed opinion about that. Some saying yes, some saying no. You look confused, councillor friend.
No, I never wanted the bull. The bull's an extra $38,000 on the current $55,000
Yeah, it says without the bull.
without the bull. So I'm happy with that.
Okay, all right.
Are you happy with the signage without the bull?
Without the bull.
Okay, as long as we know what you're saying.
All right. So, councillor Eastwood, you're happy with that wording?
I am actually.
Okay. Councillor Mather, I'm taking you on.
Absolutely not, Mr Mayor.
Okay.
Absolutely not. It's not what the people wanted.
Okay. Councillor Friend, you're comfortable with that?
Mr Mayor, I am comfortable with that, and the only reason I'm comfortable with that is because that $56,000 is already locked in, and if we change anything, we can still have the signs on the northern and southern end, and the signage that Councillor Mather has shown us, I agree with, the basic signs. However, if we were to renege on that, it's basically thrown away $56,000 of ratepayer funds, and it's just not good enough.
All right. Sorry, councillors, I'm going to go around the table again. Councillor Watson.
Oh, hang on, Mr Mayor.
Yep.
Councillor Friend had two chops, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, we're outside of standing orders, councillor, so that's fine. Councillor Watson.
I agree with Andrea. It's,
You
we
mean
can't throw the money
Councillor
away.
Friend? Yeah.
Oh, Councillor Friend, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Bello.
Generally support the direction it's heading. Item number one, I do feel that we're just missing the opportunity to improve something and maybe get closer to where Councillor Mather's alluding to, that the public are not happy with that particular sign, which is perhaps the most contentious element of this whole resolution, and it's the one thing that we perhaps could change. It may cost us a few extra dollars, but I think it'd be money well spent, which is hard for me to agree with, because I wouldn't have wanted to start here, but I'm trying to pick it up a fair way down the track and improve on it, and that's the best I can come up with. So, but generally in support.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Husson.
Not in support, but accepting that it seems like the general will of the table.
Generally speaking, councillors, I'm not in support of the white signage, not for the reasons that have been alluded to around the table, although I do hate the idea of losing money. But I guess from a placemaking point of view, this is a sign that's going to appear at this stage only in Marlborough. And where is our consistency right throughout the Shire? Russell?
Mayor, it was the intention that this would be the platform for similar signage, so there was a consistency through the Shire. It's just that Marlborough was the first off the ranks. It wouldn't have been ordinarily, but because of the Works for Queensland funding, it's ended up in that role.
Yeah, I suspected as much, but I have to say going forward.
And that was intended to be part of the discussion last year, when that, unfortunately that didn't occur until January, and then I wasn't there, and so we didn't really have that conversation about the larger signage picture.
All right. Okay, councillors. Point 2, council endorses the replication of existing welcome to Marlborough signage on the northern and southern approaches to the township, subject to appropriate main roads approvals. Councillor Reeswood.
I'm actually not sure if that's actually necessary, since 3 signs on the approach and from both the northern and southern end, as Councillor Mather has told us today. So I'm actually not sure if that's actually needed at the moment.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Mather.
Mr Mayor, number 3 is predicated on 1 and 2. The only way you can adopt 3 would be if you adopted 1 and 2.
That's right. Yeah, I'm just concentrating on 2 at the moment, councillor. I understand what you're saying.
I don't know if members realise that. Mr Member.
So are there, in your view, sufficient signs on the northern and southern entry to Marlborough?
Mr Mayor, the people don't want the white signs. It's as simple as that. If that's what you give them, it's not what they want. That's what I'm saying.
I get that. I understand that. But what I'm asking at the moment is, are there sufficient signs on the northern and southern entrance to Marlborough?
They're main road signs, Mr Mayor.
Okay.
They're main road signs. They're not
So-
anything that would endear people to come into town. And that's what they were looking for. And I think if you remember that if you're going to look at those white signs, they're only intended for one end of town. You won't have enough money for 2 ends of town. And if you did have enough money by any chance by the time you pay your debt, then you won't have any money for the mural or the park. So, think a little deeper, Mr Mayor.
Well, councillor, I think out of a $140,000 budget, if you accept the white signage, that's $56,000 out of it, and you put a few more signs around, there's a little bit of money left over for placemaking. But I guess I just want to clarify with you, Councillor May, that the signs coming in on the northern and southern entrance to Marlborough are main road signs. What that's proposing is to replace those or replicate them. Would you be in support of that? Or replicate them, yes. Give them new ones, add to them. Yeah. Yeah, the ones that you're basically showing before. If they were placed at the southern and northern entrances to Marlborough.
I don't know if we can make those decisions today, because this is a main road installation, isn't it?
Yeah, it says subject to appropriate main roads approval, councillor.
I can't make that decision on my own.
I'll just read the point 2 again, councillor. It says council endorses the replication of existing welcome to Marlborough signage. It says the key word there is endorses on the northern and southern approaches to the township, subject to appropriate main roads approval. So what we're saying is, are we prepared to endorse new signage, welcome to Marlborough, northern and southern entrances, if main roads gives us approval to do that?
I'd consider that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I'd consider that. What I do know is that with $140,000, and how much is the lettering on?
Microphone, councillor. Yeah.
We have a 140,000 budget. How much is the white lettering without the ball? Because I heard the ball was 85,000 on its own.
Yeah.
May I answer this? I'll answer it for you, officers. 55,000 was the white lettering. 38,000 was the bull. The white lettering is already locked in, and if we don't have that, we can say no to it. That's fine, but we lose that $55,000.
And I pose a question to Councillor Watson. If we have the material that we've purchased, can it be utilised somewhere else in the Shire?
That's probably not an appropriate question for councillor.
Well, he's in sign writing, Mr. Mayor.
No, but he won't know what we're going to use signage for or metal for, councillor.
that's
That would be an
I'm sorry,
appropriate
Glenda, I
question
can't,
to
I
the
can't
That's all
answer
right.
that.
That's all right.
That would be an appropriate question for the CEO
Well, these are things that
or
we
the
need to
engineer.
know.
Yeah.
Because I'm not about to throw money away either.
Yeah.
We've purchased something, it's a pup.
All right.
We just need to get the best value. It was only meant for one side of the, one entrance to the township. And we've got 2 entrances. I mean, we've got to think bilaterally here.
Well, that's what point 2 was trying to do, councillor. I'm going to go to councillor Friend.
Yes, I agree with point 2.
Okay. Councillor Watson.
I'm kind of a little confused, Councillor May. The signs that are north and south that are already there, what do they look like? They're just the green sign that says thing. And are we talking about? Okay, I haven't seen them. So are we going to replicate that, or are we going to do the Marlborough as that Glenda's showing? Councillor Mather is showing.
I think the intent, councillor Watson, was the signage that councillor Mather was showing before.
The top one? Yep.
Yes.
Okay. No, I'm okay with that. Yes. So number 2 is fine.
Okay. Councillor Bello. Okay. I think we're all getting a bit brain dead at the moment. Councillor Hutton.
No, Mr Mayor, I don't support this one. Good councillors told us there's 3 signs to the north, there's 2 signs to the south. Adding additional signage in that's a generic TMR wouldn't seem to add value and reduces the amount of funding that would otherwise be available for other purposes. I do wonder if maybe we're at a point now where our discussion on each of these has become more of a debate rather than construction. I'm wondering if maybe we just need to take this and give it a whirl as a recommendation, and if it passes, we move on, and if it doesn't, come back and spend some more time in the pits.
All right. Okay. Good point, councillor. I'll take it on under advisement. So, well, councillor, councils, I beg your pardon. We've got a recommendation here. We'll deal with this latest iteration. You've got the 3 points there, as proposed by a draft from the CEO. That council resolves to continue with the project, but with white lettered Marlborough signage as shown in attachment 1 only, without the bull figure. 2, council endorses the replication of existing welcome to Marlborough signage on the northern and southern approaches to the township, subject to appropriate main roads approvals. And 3, unexpended funds be redirected to other township improvements, including but not limited to park enhancement, benches, etc., and a mural on the newly painted toilet block. That's what we're going to be discussing in a minute, councillors. So can I get a resolution to come out or to resume standing orders, please? Thank you, Councillor Eastwood. All in favour? Unanimously carried. All right, so councillors, we've got the recommendation there. Can I get a mover, please, for this one? Councillor Friend, thank you. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Watson, thank you. All right. So, Councillor Friend, would you like to speak to?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been an ongoing situation for Livingstone, trying to help the residents of Marlborough ever since we became councillors last April. We've had reports, we've had information come back, we've put suggestions up, and the people of Marlborough wanted a simple signage, something that would spark passerbys' interest for them to think, oh, what's Marlborough? What's in Marlborough? What can I see there? Is there a cafe? Can I get something to eat? What can I discover? And this is where it all began. We were all in favour for Marlborough signage. What's happened, I believe, is a process of incompetence that has led us to this particular issue, that now we have this huge white sign saying Marlborough that no one was truly happy with, including not the people of the town who live there. They're concerned with whippersnipping, they're concerned with cleaning, and you know what? I don't blame them. But I do move this motion because I don't want to see the $56,000 that has been locked in lost. A large sign may certainly spark passerbys' interest, but I also agree with the second part of the resolution where it states a Marlborough signage at both the southern and the northern entrance as well. I'm certainly completely in support of the third part of this resolution where it states park benches, because as good Councillor Mathers said earlier, Anzac Day wasn't all it could have been because there wasn't enough seating for all that attended, and that certainly will enhance the park in Marlborough, as well as some colour and some vibrancy, something that, a mural that states, we are Marlborough, we are country, we love our land. And I certainly endorse that 100%. So I commit this to the table and that's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Friend. Is anyone speaking against the proposed resolution? Councillor Hutton?
I will, but just before I do, I wonder if the councillor, if through you, Mr. Mayor, if we making a point of order, I didn't wish to interrupt the flow of the speech, but I am concerned around the language, and I wonder whether the councillor would consider withdrawing the comment around incompetency, rather reflecting that while we may individually be unhappy with the outcome of the process, I'm not sure that the process itself is incompetent. Rather, it's just there's an unhappiness, and the councillor may decide not to, but just putting it out there and requesting her consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Hutton, and I appreciate you bringing that to my attention, and I withdraw that comment formally. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Hutton, are you speaking against?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I believe with the best of intentions that the action that is proposed for us today is not the outcome that the community of Marlborough needs, but also a reflection of the fact that we're on a journey where I honestly am not sure that we know what the community of Marlborough wants or needs. And while with the best of intentions we've gone out on this journey, and while we've had a process of engagement with varying success through the various stages, we've come to a point where we've got an outcome that's time limited based on the fact that funding must be expended by a certain period, and I'm not sure that in those circumstances that anything will do, or the best of bad choices is therefore an acceptable answer as to why we chose to spend ratepayers' money, even though it wasn't money that was granted through rates tendered to us, but rather through fees and charges that they've paid to the state government. Like, Works for Queensland is public money, and while if we wouldn't accept our community paying $56,000 for this signage, or was concerned around our community not appreciating or approving the expenditure on their behalf, why? Because it's money from the state government that came out of their pockets anyway. Should our view be any different? When I look at the detail of this, I look at part one and think, well, the white-lettered Marlborough sign that with the bull may have been a tourist attraction was outside the township, and my concern there is that without the bull it is a reduced tourist attraction, but more importantly it doesn't draw anyone into the town, but has them 1 kilometre away from the town, maybe pulling over, with the only beneficiary being a service station or two. Number two sees us replicating existing signage that's already on the northern and southern approaches to the township, ultimately providing additional signage in places where there's a signage saying this is where Marlborough is, without actually achieving the outcome of giving them any further information regarding that township. And thirdly, my concern with the unexpended funds to be redirected to township improvements, including but not limited to park equipment and a mural, is that as this process has demonstrated, decision by committee when it comes to artistic endeavour is not something that I believe is going to be achieved in short term, nor is it necessarily going to be an outcome that a whole of a community will adopt. The mural that tomorrow that one of us decides would be wonderful and is affordable within the funds that are available might be the exact one that the person the next day says, well, that's completely the wrong bull, or that's the wrong style of hat, or his belt buckle's not good enough, or why are you putting cowboys in our picture anyway? And in which case we end up finding ourselves in a situation where instead of having one white elephant per se that the community are unhappy with, we've now replicated it by producing multiple. For those reasons I can't support this motion and won't be voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor Hutton. Is anyone speaking for Councillor Watson?
When we started this process, obviously I wasn't here, but in the last 2 months we've been talking fairly regularly about the signage. I've always thought the whole idea of it was to try and help the town, to give it its, place on the map, but also to help the businesses and everything else, to get them to come off the highway. And I feel that the only way it can work is if we have to use the big white letters of Marlborough, we have to have something else with it that says, this is what's in that town. I've just walked up and down the Global Earth thing of the streets, looking at the highway, looking at the signs, and they're just a simple green sign that says Marlborough. It needs more than that. No one knows that there's a township behind the service station on the road, and that's what I think our job is.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Anyone speaking against? Councillor Mather?
I guess I've probably spent as much time on this matter than anybody, and we're really advancing so slowly with no clear direction at this point in time. I would have hoped that everybody be on the same page. Everybody's got to understand what's needed, and they've got to understand what the people want. They're simple people. They don't ask for too much, they don't expect too much, they get very little. I have to ask to get the streets cleaned. I have to ask to get the toilet block painted. And other things. This is something that's important to them, more important than you realise. I won't support the white lettering, $55,000, which only takes in one side of town. If you did 2 sides of town, it'd be $110,000. And you add your bill into that for the work already undertaken, $56,000, I take it, you've exceeded your budget. I can understand that you don't want to waste money by walking away from a job that was half done. I'd like to see us lie this on the table, and I'll move to that effect in a minute. Get further information to see what can be done with the material that we've purchased so far. I want us all to be on the same page for the same reasons. None of us want to waste money. We want the best outcome for the funding that's available. We want to be fighting amongst ourselves. There's enough wars going on outside. while we've got the opportunity to do it right, let's do it right. As I said, we've spent a lot of time on this, and we're all sincere in what we're saying. We all believe it. But if we want to walk away from it and just take the white lettering because we've already paid for it, you don't make two mistakes. If you went with one lettering, $55,000, $56,000 for the debt paid, to be paid, there's your $111,000. You've got $30,000 left over for park benches, a mural. $30,000 doesn't go very far. If the money was spent in the right direction, for the right purpose, for the right message, I wouldn't have a problem. And I can be flexible. This is not the right message. As Councillor Watson said, they've got to be enticed into the town. What have you got to offer us? And I think this is what we've got to do. We've got to make the best of that money. It is government money. We are responsible for it. And Mr. Mayor, we need a little bit more information. This is not a life and death situation today. And I'd like to move that the matter lie on the table for a date to be fixed within, for a future meeting, for a date to be fixed within 2 weeks, pending additional information to clarify issues surrounding the work on signage already undertaken. Because I want to see that if we can do something with that material, it's not going to be wasted. Because, let's face it, the contractor will only on-sell it and use it for somebody else's job, which is already been paid for. So there'll be a double whammy there.
Well, Councillor Mather, we've got a live motion here at the moment. We're going to deal with that one. We'll come back to yours if this one fails. Rightio. All right, anyone speaking?
Mr Chair, if I
Yeah.
could, my understanding is the councillor's moved a procedural motion to lay on the table, which we can deal with that here and
I
now.
thought once we had a live motion on the table, we had to deal with that.
But the procedural motion has the ability to.
Procedural motion opens the line to it.
Right, all right, okay. Thank you, Councillor Bellet.
However, I adding to the, I'm not certain that a procedural motion during a live debate, once you've already spoken, is able to be provided by a councillor. It should be by a councillor that hasn't yet spoken. So you can't talk and then put a procedural motion, and that's what. But can we just check that, please? Because I know that we have.
Right. She's speaking to it at the moment, yeah.
Procedural motion, motion lie on the table shall only be moved where the chairperson or a councillor believes that there has been sufficient debate about the matter and the committee will require additional information on the matter under consideration. The matter may be concluded where such a procedural motion is passed, the council shall proceed to the next item where a motion is heard. Procedural motion may be moved indefinitely for a second to put one of the following motions at any time or during the debate of a matter, including what the report lay on the table. I don't see the reference.
I may be mistaken in the latest set of the rules as to how it applies, so that's fine. That's why I was asking the question as opposed to.
All right, so you're moving a procedural motion, Councillor. Can you give the wording to Justine, please? You've got it?
Yeah.
Right, so you're just going to move, councillor, that it lay on the table?
The matter lie on the table for a date to be fixed, for a meeting, for a date to be fixed within 2 weeks,
Hang on, so lay on the table for,
for a date to be fixed within 2 weeks. Pending additional information. To clarify issues surrounding the unsigned application.
righto.
Mr Mayor, it would be, whilst it's entirely a matter for councillors as to whether the motion passes or not, it would be difficult to understand what additional information could be provided that will aid the decision-making process.
Councillor Hutton?
Mr Mayor, while I completely agree with the CEO in his deductions, I also understand that a procedural motion has to be passed without debate or discussion.
Yep. All right, so everyone understand the procedural motion? All right, so those in favour, please stand. All right. Those against? Okay, so that's the matter, yeah, I know, yeah. All right. So the motion is lost, so we go back to the debate. All right, so the next speaker is the speaker for. Thank you, Councillor Hutton. Councillor Mather just spoke against, so I'm after anyone else wishing to speak for. All right. So we're happy to wind up debate here, councillors. I'm actually going to say a few words as well, councillors, before we do that. I'm going to vote against this resolution because I'm, I suppose, totally unsure and conflicted around the level of consultation that has occurred in relation to this. I don't know what the people of Marlborough want. Some of you around the table may be convinced, but I'm not, because ultimately we've got conflicting reports about what it is they say they want. On one hand, we've got the results of a survey. On the other hand, we've got the results of conversations that Councillor Mather had. And whereas I'm not doubting either pieces of data, they are totally conflicting, which means to me, I don't know what the actual requirements of the residents of Marlborough are. I'm also looking at the consistency argument, and although we've had this conversation and Mr Klaus assures me that the white lettering is part of a program that was to have been rolled out right across the Shire, if it's going to be this difficult every time we want to do that, then I seriously doubt whether that's going to happen, quite frankly. In terms of the money, I would rather go to the community and say we've lost a certain amount of money, and I don't think it's going to be 56 or 55,000 in entirety, given that we'll be able to use or reuse that sheet metal. I'm prepared to go to the community and say we spent some money, but we haven't given you a product that you don't want, potentially. All right, because we don't know what they want. So we don't know whether they want it or they don't want it. So I'm happy enough to go to the community and say we've spent $55,000 as an experiment, but ultimately not the fact that you are not getting a sign may or may not be what you want, but let's move on and have a look at something else. So that's where I'm sitting on this, councillors. So I will be voting against this particular resolution. I understand, councillor, thank you. So we'll go to the vote on this. It's moved by Councillor Friend, seconded by Councillor Watson.
Sum up, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor.
Thank you. Mr Mayor and councillors and those watching on live stream, this has been a very, very difficult decision, and the circumstances have been extraordinary, to be honest with you. $56,000. It's a one-off. It's the $56,000. It's not two lots of $56,000 that's already spent. It's just the one, which left $85,000 for signs either on either southern and northern side, and also then some placemaking within Marlborough. I completely do understand what Mr Mayor has just said, and I completely understand what Councillor Mather and Councillor Hutton have also said. But to me, to throw that $56,000 away, my conscience cannot do it, and that's the only reason why I'm moving this and why I'm voting for it. Am I happy about it? No, but I'm certainly not happy about losing $56,000. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Friend. All right, we'll go to the vote on this one, councillors. We have a division called by Councillor Mather. So all in favour, please stand. Councillor Friend, thank you. Those against, please stand. So Councillor Eastwood, Councillor Mather, Councillor Watson, Councillor Bellow, Councillor Hutton and Councillor Isle. So the motion is lost. So councillors, we're back into the pit.
Can I suggest that we adjourn this meeting for the moment? No, in all fairness, this is serious. It's happened a few times in my career, if that's a word, that when you get to a point that the stakes are high, the feelings are sincere, but we're not making any ground. And for fear of making a mistake in a decision, it's best to let it sit for a little while and come back when you're fresh.
Excuse me, Chair, I hate to interrupt the good councillor, and I'm looking forward to the answer to that, but can I just get clarification? Is the meeting closed?
Not yet, councillor.
I haven't still on the live stream?
Yeah, we're still on live stream.
Thank you.
And my thought, Mr Mayor, all I needed to say is, when you get to that situation, for fear of making a mistake or making the wrong decision, and we're talking lots of money here, public money, it's best to adjourn the meeting, to come back when you're fresh and had a bit of a think about what you want to do and
All right, thank you for those words of advice, councillor. Councillors, I am going to close the meeting in a minute. No, I'm just going to close the meeting, councillor, because at this point in time, I don't see any point in continuing until we get some more detail around this, or some more consideration, and maybe we'll have a conversation with the CEO after the meeting about where we go in terms of perhaps convening another meeting to discuss this. But at this point in time, I think we're all done for the day. I will make a comment though before I go to you, Councillor Bellow. The officers embarked on this process as a result of an operational budget allocation last year. Now, my comment around this is that they didn't do anything wrong. Ultimately, they went and did their job based on a budget allocation that was given to them by us. All right. Now, you can argue that part of the process may have been less than desirable in terms of keeping us engaged and involved, but they were essentially doing their job. And that's why Councillor Friend, I think Councillor Hutton was right to pull you up if you were alluding to their performance in your comment before.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I retracted that.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
understand that, yeah. But councillors, I guess it behooves us all in this next round of budget to have a close look at the operational budget, because these are the sorts of things that will be in it, and these are the sorts of things that we don't want to be doing on a regular basis, or any sort of basis for that matter, because they are time consuming, and I guess from an officer's point of view, perhaps a little bit demoralising. And I certainly understand their position, but they also, I'm sure, understand ours, because there is a concern around this table about, one, the product, and two, the level of expenditure around that and what we're getting in terms of value for money. So councillors, on that note, Councillor Bellow, I'm going to switch to you. Do you have a comment?
No, I think you've wrapped it up really well. I was just only mindful of the parameters for a special meeting, and importantly that we kept within that that framework. So, and I think you're certainly doing that. So, thank you.
All right. All right, councillors, on that basis, I'm going to close the meeting and thank you for your attendance and thank you for those people viewing in on live stream who've stuck with us. I'm sure it's been painful.